Step beyond the headlines and experience the reality of the courtroom. The material you are viewing is entirely unfiltered and unedited. This is raw, documented footage from the front lines of justice, bringing you face to face with the unyielding truth.
Hold it. Step away from the door. Keep your hands visible.
Okay, I'm in my own driveway. What's the problem here?
We received a tip about this address. We need to verify your status.
I'm the police chief. I run the police department in this town. You got a warrant?
Doesn't matter. You're coming with us till we sort this out.
Two ICE agents thought they were executing a routine immigration check. They had an address, a tip from an anonymous source, and the confidence that comes from years of operating without consequences. But when they pulled into the driveway of Chief Raymond Harris at 6:52 a.m. on a Friday morning and demanded he prove his immigration status, they set in motion a chain of events that would end with both agents in federal prison, their careers obliterated, and a legal precedent that would reshape how federal enforcement operates in New Jersey. Harris wasn't just any target. He was the chief of police of Maplewood, 31-year law enforcement veteran, FBI National Academy graduate, and the son of a Newark firefighter whose family had lived in New Jersey for 4 generations. "I'm the police chief, you fucking rookies," he told them. They reached for handcuffs anyway. His Ring camera captured everything. Within 40 minutes, the FBI, the Attorney General's office, and the governor all knew what had happened in that driveway. The settlement, $9.7 million, would be the largest individual payout in New Jersey ICE history. But the real cost wasn't measured in money. It was measured in prison sentences, destroyed careers, and a lesson learned too late. Some driveways you don't pull into without a warrant. Oakwood Drive sat in one of Maplewood's quieter neighborhoods. Tree-lined, well-kept lawns. The kind of street where people waved to each other and knew whose kids belonged to which house. Chief Raymond Harris had lived at number 47 for 19 years. Raised 3 children there. Hosted neighborhood barbecues in the backyard. Watched his daughter leave for her first day as an ADA in Manhattan from that same driveway. Friday morning, 6:52 a.m. Harris stepped out the front door in his dress shirt, coffee travel mug in hand. His unmarked vehicle sat in the driveway. The same SUV he'd driven to work every day for 9 years as chief. The black Dodge Durango pulled in before he reached his car. 2 men, olive tactical vests, ICE insignia. They stepped out with the posture of officers who expected compliance. Harris watched them approach. 31 years of law enforcement had taught him to read body language. These two radiated the particular arrogance of agents who'd never been told no. "Sir, hands where I can see them. We need to verify your immigration status." Harris set his coffee mug on the hood of his car. Slowly, deliberately. "What are you talking about? We received a tip about an illegal living at this address. You fit the description." The description. Harris had heard that phrase 1,000 times, in complaints, in depositions, in civil rights cases he'd reviewed as chief. "I'm the police chief, you fucking rookies." The agent, Derek Sloan, according to the badge visible on his vest, didn't hesitate. "That's what they all say? You're being detained until we can verify your identity. You're standing in my driveway, without a warrant, demanding I prove I'm American. Sir, turn around." No. The word hung in the morning air. Final. Above the garage, the Ring camera recorded everything. Harris had installed it 3 years ago after a string of package thefts. He'd never imagined it would document this. Across the street, his neighbor David Morrison had stepped onto his porch with his own coffee. He was watching. His phone was rising. "You're making a career-ending mistake," Harris said. Sloan reached for his handcuffs. "Oh boy, you're screwed. Turn around." Now. Harris didn't turn. He stood in his own driveway, the house his family had owned for 19 years behind him, and watched 2 federal agents destroy themselves. "For the record, I'm identifying myself as Chief Raymond Harris, Maplewood Police Department. Badge number 001. 31 years in law enforcement." Sloan's partner, Michael Torres, had positioned himself to the left. His Bodycam was active. So was Sloan's. 3 recording sources already, and the encounter was barely 2 minutes old. Anyone can claim to be a cop. My credentials are in my back pocket. My badge is in my vehicle. My department is 4 miles from here. Harris gestured toward his SUV. "That's my unmarked unit. Municipal plates. Run them." Sloan didn't move toward the vehicle. Didn't reach for his radio. Didn't do any of the verification that basic training required. "We're not running anything. You're coming with us." On what authority? Immigration enforcement. You need a warrant to detain someone on private property. We don't need a warrant for immigration checks. You do when you're on my driveway, demanding I prove citizenship without probable cause. Torres shifted uncomfortably. His body cam captured the movement, the doubt his partner refused to acknowledge. Derek, maybe we should verify. I said he's coming with us. Harris looked at Torres. Your partner is committing multiple federal violations. Unlawful detention, trespass, Fourth Amendment violation. You're on camera. You're complicit. Sir, we're just following up on a tip. A tip you didn't verify. At an address you didn't research. Against a man you didn't identify. He turned back to Sloan. Last chance. Run my plates. Call my department. Do your job. Turn around. Sloan grabbed Harris's arm. The chief didn't resist. Didn't pull away. Simply stood still while the agent's hand closed around his bicep. You just committed assault on a law enforcement officer. Battery. Unlawful restraint. You're not a law enforcement officer until I verify. I've been in law enforcement since before you were born. I've arrested people for exactly what you're doing right now. David Morrison had crossed the street. His phone was raised, recording from 10 feet away. Ray? What's going on? David, stay back. Document everything. These guys are IC. They claim to be. They don't seem to know how warrants work. Sloan turned toward Morrison. Sir, step back. This is federal business. This is my neighbor's driveway. And you're putting hands on the chief of police. He claims to be. Claims. Morrison laughed. I've lived across from Ray Harris for 15 years. I've been to his daughter's graduation party. I know exactly who he is. Another neighbor had emerged. Then another. The quiet Friday morning was becoming a very public confrontation. Sloan's grip remained on Harris's arm. The Ring camera recorded it. Morrison's phone recorded it. Torres's body cam recorded it. My wife is inside, Harris said calmly. Dr. Vanessa Harris. Pediatrician. She's watching this through the window. She's already called my department. Sloan's face flickered. Your department? Maplewood PD. The one I command. They'll be here in about 4 minutes. You're bluffing. I've never bluffed in 31 years. Ask anyone who knows me. In the distance, a siren began to wail. The Maplewood cruiser pulled onto Oakwood Drive at 7:04 a.m. Lights active. No siren. The officer had killed it 2 blocks away. Deputy Chief Angela Morrison, no relation to the neighbor, stepped out and assessed the scene in 3 seconds. Her chief in his driveway. 2 IC agents. One with his hand still on Harris's arm. Civilians recording from multiple positions. What the hell is happening here? Sloan turned. He saw the uniform, the rank insignia, the expression of someone who commanded respect and expected answers. Ma'am, this is federal. That's my chief. Release him. We're verifying his immigration. His immigration status is American citizen. Born at Newark, Beth Israel. Family's been in New Jersey 4 generations. Release him now. Torres had already let go of whatever tentative grip he'd maintained. Sloan's hand remained. I don't take orders from local. You're assaulting a law enforcement officer in his own driveway. Without a warrant. Without probable cause. Release him, or I'm placing you under arrest. You can't arrest federal agents. Watch me. Morrison's hand moved to her radio. Dispatch, this is Deputy Chief Morrison. I need backup at 47 Oakwood Drive. Federal agents have assaulted Chief Harris. Notify the county prosecutor. Notify the FBI field office. Notify the Attorney General's office. The radio crackled acknowledgement. Sloan released Harris's arm. This is a misunderstanding. There's no misunderstanding. Harris straightened his shirt, picked up his coffee mug from the hood of his car. You drove into my driveway without a warrant. You demanded I prove my citizenship. You put your hands on me after I identified myself as police chief. He looked at Morrison. Angela, secure their bodycam footage. Preservation order. And get their badge numbers. Already on it. More sirens now. County units responding to the deputy chief's call. Sloan's confidence had evaporated. Torres looked like he wanted to disappear into the concrete. We received a tip. You received a tip. You didn't verify it. You didn't research the address. You didn't identify who lived here. You saw a black man in an upscale neighborhood and decided that was enough. 2 county sheriff vehicles arrived. Then a state police cruiser. The quiet suburban street was becoming a crime scene. Harris turned to Morrison. I want their phones secured before they can delete anything. I want their vehicles searched for documentation of this tip, and and I want FBI here within the hour. Chief, I should probably go to work. Which is what I was doing when these two decided to violate my constitutional rights. He looked at Sloan one final time. I've spent 31 years in law enforcement. I've testified in hundreds of cases. I've trained officers at the FBI National Academy. And you thought you could roll up to my house without a warrant and haul me away because I fit a description. He shook his head. The description was black. That's all you had. And now you're going to explain that to federal prosecutors. An unmarked FBI vehicle turned onto the street. Harris recognized the agent stepping out. He'd worked joint task forces with her for years. Ray, you okay? I'm fine, Janet. These two aren't going to be. The investigation revealed exactly what Harris had suspected. Derek Sloan had accumulated 19 complaints in 7 years. Warrantless stops, unverified tips, targeting minority professionals in affluent neighborhoods. 16 dismissed. 3 resulted in reprimands that changed nothing. His stop records showed the methodology. 83% of his enforcement actions targeted Black or Hispanic individuals. 0 had resulted in actual immigration violations. Every single subject had been American citizens or legal residents. The anonymous tip was traced within 48 hours. A burner phone purchased in Newark. The caller, later identified through voice analysis, was Richard Davenport, a neighbor 3 houses down who had complained about the Harris family's annual 4th of July party for 6 consecutive years. Davenport had a history: noise complaints, parking disputes, a letter to the Homeowners Association questioning whether certain residents were maintaining property values. The language was careful. The intent was clear. He had called IC because a Black family lived on his street. Text messages between Sloan and Torres painted the operational picture. Got a tip about Oakwood Drive. Nice neighborhood. Probably an overstay. Upscale area. Worth checking. These people think money makes them untouchable. These people. The phrase appeared 17 times in Sloan's communications over 3 years. Torres had participated in 11 of Sloan's stops. He had expressed doubt in several. He had been told to follow orders. His cooperation with investigators was immediate and complete. His testimony would be essential. His career was still over. The FBI's analysis concluded that Sloan had operated a pattern of discriminatory enforcement for at least 5 years. His supervisors had enabled it by dismissing complaints and celebrating arrest statistics. Harris's home security footage was pristine. The Ring camera had captured everything in high definition. The demand for immigration status. The claim about fitting a description. The hand on his arm. The moment Sloan chose to ignore identification from a 31-year law enforcement veteran. Neighbor footage added additional angles. David Morrison's phone video. Security cameras from 2 adjacent properties. The evidence was comprehensive and damning. The federal grand jury convened 6 weeks later. Sloan was indicted on deprivation of rights under color of law, assault, unlawful detention, and conspiracy to violate civil rights. Torres received lesser charges in exchange for cooperation. Richard Davenport was indicted separately for filing false reports and conspiracy. Harris testified for 3 hours. He didn't need notes. 31 years of courtroom experience had prepared him for exactly this. They didn't see a homeowner. They didn't see a police chief. They didn't see 31 years of service. They saw a Black man in an expensive neighborhood, and they decided that was suspicious enough. The grand jury returned indictments on all counts. The federal courtroom in Newark drew statewide attention. A police chief detained in his own driveway. ICE agents who ignored identification. The footage played on every news channel. Harris testified in his dress uniform. 31 years of service displayed through medals and insignia. I identified myself as chief of police. I offered to show credentials. I pointed to my unmarked vehicle with municipal plates. The agent responded, "That's what they all say." What happened next? He grabbed my arm. In my own driveway. In front of my neighbors. While my wife watched through the window. The Bodycam footage played for the jury. Sloan approaching. The demand for immigration status. Harris's identification. The dismissal. The grab. That's what they all say. The phrase echoed through the courtroom. Torres testified under his cooperation agreement. He described Sloan's methodology. The preference for affluent neighborhoods. The assumption that minority residents were targets. The dismissal of complaints as oversensitivity. Did you believe Chief Harris's identification? Yes. Did you communicate that to Agent Sloan? I tried. He told me to shut up. Did you attempt to verify independently? No. I followed his lead. Richard Davenport testified under subpoena. His motivation collapsed under cross-examination. You called ICE because Chief Harris is black. I called because I had concerns. Concerns about what? His barbecues? His daughter's graduation party. There was noise. You called a federal immigration tip line about noise? Davenport had no answer. Sloan's defense argued good faith. Following a tip. Standard procedure. The prosecutor's response was surgical. Standard procedure requires warrant verification. Standard procedure requires identity confirmation. Standard procedure does not include grabbing a police chief in his driveway because you don't believe black men can live in nice neighborhoods. The jury deliberated 4 hours. Guilty. All counts. Sloan. Guilty. Reduced charges. Torres. Guilty. False reports and conspiracy. Davenport. Sloan showed no reaction. Torres wept quietly. Davenport stared at the table. The judge scheduled sentencing for 8 weeks later. Agent Sloan, you were entrusted with federal authority. You used it to harass, detain, and assault an American citizen, a police chief, in his own driveway. Without a warrant. Without verification. Without any legal basis. The judge reviewed sentencing materials without expression. Your pattern spans 5 years. 83% of your stops targeted minorities. 0 resulted in actual violations. Every complaint was dismissed because your supervisors prioritized numbers over rights. Sloan's sentence, 5 years federal prison. Enhanced for pattern of conduct and assault on a law enforcement officer. Torres received 18 months. Cooperation had reduced his exposure but couldn't eliminate it entirely. Davenport received 2 years probation for 100 hours community service and mandatory diversity training. The judge noted that his actions had weaponized federal enforcement against his neighbors. All 3 were led from the courtroom in handcuffs. The civil settlement followed within 3 months. The Department of Homeland Security agreed to pay $9.7 million rather than face a trial exposing systemic failures across the Newark field office. Harris directed the distribution. $3 million to scholarships for law enforcement professionals from underrepresented communities. $2 million to civil rights organizations focused on immigration enforcement accountability. $1 million to the New Jersey Law Enforcement Memorial Foundation. The remainder secured his family. College for his youngest daughter. A foundation in his father's name supporting Newark firefighters' families. ICE entered a consent decree in New Jersey requiring warrant verification for all residential enforcement actions. Mandatory identification protocols. Civilian oversight of complaint processes. The policies Sloan had violated were now explicitly codified. Harris returned to work the same day as the incident. Walked into his morning briefing. Addressed his officers. What happened this morning is exactly what we train against. Officers who assume. Officers who ignore identification. Officers who let bias override procedure. He looked around the room. We're better than that. We verify. We document. We treat every person, regardless of where they live or what they look like, with the dignity they deserve. The department's training curriculum was updated within the month. Harris's encounter became a case study. What happens when officers ignore constitutional requirements? What happens when assumptions replace investigation? He testified before the New Jersey State Legislature 3 months later. His testimony was broadcast statewide. I've spent 31 years in law enforcement. I've arrested violent criminals. I've worked undercover against drug traffickers. I've rescued children from burning cars. And the most helpless I've ever felt was standing in my own driveway while federal agents ignored my identification because they couldn't believe a black man was a police chief. The legislature passed 3 bills within the year. Enhanced warrant requirements for state cooperation with federal immigration enforcement. Mandatory recording of all immigration-related stops. Civilian review boards for complaints against federal agents operating in New Jersey. Harris was appointed to the governor's task force on law enforcement accountability. His recommendations shaped policy for the next 5 years. His daughter, the ADA in Manhattan, used the case in her own training materials. His son, the Marine captain, shared it with his military police unit. His youngest, the Howard Sr., wrote her thesis on the intersection of local and federal enforcement authority. 4 generations of service. 4 generations of proving that some families don't need to justify their presence. Richard Davenport sold his house 6 months after the verdict. The neighborhood had made clear he wasn't welcome. No one vandalized his property. No one threatened him. They simply stopped waving, stopped talking, stopped pretending he was part of the community he had tried to weaponize against his neighbors. His house sold for 15% below market value. The buyers were a young black couple, doctors at Newark Beth Israel. Harris helped them move in. David Morrison, the neighbor who had recorded the confrontation, was awarded a civilian commendation by the Maplewood Police Department. His footage had been essential to the prosecution. "I just did what anyone would do," he said at the ceremony. "Raise my neighbor. My friend. I've known him 19 years. Those agents had no idea what they were walking into. The Ring camera footage became part of law enforcement training nationwide. The FBI Academy used it. The Police Executive Research Forum distributed it. The moment Sloan grabbed Harris's arm, and everything that followed, became a teaching tool for what not to do. Harris never removed the Ring camera. It still recorded every morning when he left for work. Same driveway, same routine, same coffee mug. The only difference was the small American flag pin he added to his suit jacket. His father had given it to him decades ago. He'd never worn it to work before. "I'm not making a statement," he told his wife when she noticed. "I'm just tired of proving something that should be obvious." His wife, Dr. Vanessa Harris, still watched from the window every morning. Old habit now, making sure no one else pulled into the driveway with bad intentions. No one did. Derek Sloan served 4 years of his 5-year sentence. Released to a halfway house in Pennsylvania. Barred from federal employment for life. Stripped of his pension. His name appears in law enforcement databases as a cautionary tale. Michael Torres completed his 18 months. He testified at 3 subsequent trials involving ICE misconduct. His cooperation continued. His career didn't. Richard Davenport moved to Florida. Public records show he's been cited twice for homeowners association violations at his new residence. Some patterns don't break. Chief Raymond Harris served 3 more years before retiring at 62. His final day drew 500 people to the Maplewood Community Center. Officers, residents, families he'd served for 3 decades. His successor is Angela Morrison, first female chief in department history. First deputy chief to arrest federal agents for assaulting her commander. The Harris family still lives at 47 Oakwood Drive. For generations of New Jersey roots don't transplant easily. His daughter won her first major federal case last year, a civil rights prosecution that cited her father's incident in the opening statement. His son made major in the Marines, still uses the case study in his training programs. His youngest graduated Howard summa cum laude, started law school in the fall. Civil rights focus. The driveway looks the same as it did that Friday morning. Concrete, unremarkable. The kind of space where Americans should be able to stand without proving they belong. Harris still drinks his coffee there some mornings. Watches the sunrise over the houses he's protected for 19 years. Sometimes neighbors walk by and wave. Sometimes they stop to talk. No one mentions the incident anymore. It's part of history now, documented, adjudicated, resolved. But the Ring camera still records. The flag pin still sits on his jacket. And somewhere in federal databases, the case file remains open as a training reference. Case number 2024 CR 00847. Subject, unlawful detention of law enforcement officer. Location, 47 Oakwood Drive, Maplewood, New Jersey. Outcome, conviction. Settlement. Reform. Lesson, some driveways you don't pull into without a warrant. Chief Raymond Harris proved that lesson the only way available, by standing still while federal agents destroyed themselves. By being exactly who he said he was. By documenting everything. By winning.
Sir, I need you to step aside. We have reason to believe that the employee is in this country illegally.
I'm not stepping anywhere. Where's your warrant?
We don't need a warrant for immigration enforcement. She's coming with us.
The hell you don't. This is private property.
Last chance, old man. Move, or you're getting charged with obstruction.
Last chance, old man. Move, or you're getting charged with obstruction. Agent Victor Reeves said those words to Harold Johnson, third-generation owner of Johnson's Family Market, 38 years protecting a store his grandfather had opened in 1962. A man who had turned down million-dollar offers from developers because the neighborhood needed a grocery store more than he needed money. The old man didn't move. Behind him stood Maya Thompson, the cashier Reeves had come to detain. 22 years old. Born at Piedmont Atlanta Hospital. Grandmother worked at the same store for 20 years. Birth announcement still on the bulletin board. Reeves didn't have a warrant, didn't have probable cause, didn't have anything except an anonymous tip and the assumption that a black woman behind a register might not belong. The security cameras caught the reach. The obstruction charge never materialized. What materialized instead was $8.4 million and the end of a career that had targeted the wrong store owner. Johnson's Family Market sat on Edgewood Avenue in the old 4th Ward, the same corner it had occupied since Samuel Johnson signed the lease in 1962. The neighborhood had changed around it. Segregation had ended. Urban renewal had come and gone. Gentrification had transformed the blocks on either side. The store remained. Maya Thompson had been part of that store since before she could walk. Her grandmother Dorothy had carried her through the aisles as an infant. Her mother Patricia still shopped there every Sunday after choir practice at Ebenezer Baptist. Register 3 was Maya's station. 6 years behind that counter, bagger at 16, cashier at 18, assistant manager at 21. The regulars lined up for her lane because she remembered their names, their orders, the small details that turned transactions into conversations. Thursday afternoon, 2:23 p.m. The after-lunch rush filling the checkout lanes. Maya was scanning groceries for Mrs. Patterson. Weekly order, same items every week, when the two men entered through the front doors. Olive tactical vests, 10 cargo pants, ice insignia on the shoulders. They walked directly toward her register. Maya Thompson? She looked up. The scanner beeped in her hand, forgotten. Yes. We need you to come with us. Mrs. Patterson's groceries sat half-bagged on the counter. The customers in line had gone silent. The particular stillness of people recognizing that something was wrong. Come with you where? I'm working. Ma'am, we have reason to believe you're in this country illegally. We're going to need you to step away from the register. Maya stared at him. The words didn't connect to anything real. Illegally? I was born here. That's what we need to verify. Verify? I have a Georgia driver's license. I have a social security card. I have. Ma'am, step away from the register. In the back of the store, a stock clerk named Deshawn had seen the agents enter. He was already moving toward the office where Harold Johnson reviewed invoices every Thursday afternoon. Mr. Hell, you need to come up front. Right now. Johnson looked up from his paperwork. What's wrong? Ice. They're at Maya's register. Johnson was out of his chair before Deshawn finished the sentence. 62 years old, but he moved like a man half his age when his people needed him. He pushed through the stockroom door and saw the scene at Register 3. 2 agents. Maya frozen behind the counter. Customers watching with phones beginning to rise. 38 years of protecting this store. 3 generations of Johnson family legacy. And now federal agents trying to take one of his own. He walked straight toward them. Johnson positioned himself between Reeves and the register. The movement was deliberate. A physical barrier backed by 38 years of ownership and 62 years of family history. What's going on here? Reeves turned. He saw the green apron, the flannel shirt beneath it, the stance of someone who wasn't moving. Sir, I need you to step aside. We have reason to believe this employee is in this country illegally. Reason to believe based on what? That's confidential. You're trying to take my employee out of my store based on confidential information. I'm asking you, what's your basis? We received a tip. A tip. Johnson let the word sit. Someone called you about Maya Thompson. Did you verify it? We're verifying now. No, you're not. You're detaining. You haven't verified anything. Sir, where's your warrant? The question cut through the store noise. Customers had stopped moving. Employees had gathered at the edges of the checkout area. The security camera above Register 3 captured everything. We don't need a warrant for immigration enforcement. She's coming with us. The hell you don't. This is private property. Reeves's expression hardened. ICE has authority to conduct enforcement operations. On public property. At the border. Not inside my store, grabbing my employees without judicial authorization. I'm not going to argue law with you. Then don't. Show me a warrant or leave. Maya stood frozen behind Johnson. Her hands gripped the edge of the counter. The scanner still hung in her right hand, forgotten. Mr. Hell, stay where you are, Maya. You don't have to go anywhere with these men. Reeves stepped closer to Johnson. Sir, I understand you want to protect your employee, but if she's here illegally, she's not. She was born at Piedmont Atlanta Hospital. Her birth announcement is on the bulletin board in my back office. Her grandmother worked at this store for 20 years. That doesn't prove. Her grandmother, Dorothy Thompson. She stood at that same register from 1990 to 2010. Maya grew up in these aisles. I gave her first job when she was 16 years old. Johnson pointed to the wall behind the registers, where employee photos hung in neat rows. That's her grandmother's picture. That's Maya at her high school graduation. That's her mother, Patricia, who sings in the choir at Ebenezer Baptist and shops here every Sunday. He turned back to Reeves. This girl is as American as I am. As American as you are. And you're not taking her anywhere without a warrant. Reeves's partner had positioned himself to the side. His bodycam captured the confrontation from a wider angle. The store owner blocking access, the cashier behind him, the customers and employees watching. Sir, last warning. Warning about what? You have no legal authority here. You have no warrant. You have a phone call you didn't bother to check. Move aside. No. The word hung in the air. Final. Absolute. Reeves's hand moved toward his belt. You're being charged with obstruction of federal officers. Then charge me. But you're not touching that girl. Reeves reached past Johnson. The store owner was 62 years old. Not as fast as he used to be. But he shifted his weight, blocking the reach with his shoulder. Don't touch her. Old man, I'm done asking. And I'm done being polite. Get out of my store. Reeves grabbed Johnson's arm, trying to move him aside. Johnson held his ground. 38 years of lifting stock boxes and refusing to sell to developers had left him stronger than he looked. You're assaulting me in my own store. I'm executing federal authority. You're committing battery on private property without a warrant. The customers had their phones up now. At least 6 cameras documenting the confrontation from different angles. The store's security system captured it all from above. The agent's hand on the owner's arm. The struggle for position, Maya pressed against the counter behind them. Mrs. Patterson, 73 years old, shopping at this store since Harold Sr. ran it, raised her voice. You leave that man alone. That's Mr. Hal. He's been running this store since before you were born. Other voices joined. What are you doing? She works here. We know her. Get out of this store. Reeves's partner shifted uncomfortably. His bodycam captured his face, the doubt that Reeves refused to acknowledge. Victor, maybe we should. Shut up. Reeves released Johnson's arm and reached around him, grabbing Maya's wrist across the counter. She cried out. Not loud, the surprised sound of someone suddenly seized. You're coming with me. Johnson grabbed Reeves's arm with both hands. Let go of her. You're obstructing. You're assaulting my employee. Without a warrant. Without probable cause. In front of 30 witnesses. A man stepped out of line at Register 4. Mid-50s. Gray at the temples. The particular bearing of someone with law enforcement experience. Agent, I'm Detective Lieutenant Marcus Williams, Atlanta PD, retired. What I'm witnessing here is unlawful detention, assault, and trespass on private property. Reeves turned his head but didn't release Maya's wrist. This is federal business. Federal business requires warrants for entry into private establishments to detain individuals. Do you have one? Silence. I didn't think so. Release that woman's arm, or I'll be happy to provide testimony at your civil rights trial. Reeves's partner had stepped back entirely now, distancing himself from the catastrophe. Victor, let her go. This isn't worth it. She's an illegal. She's a citizen. Look around. Everyone here knows her. Everyone's recording. Let her go. Johnson's voice dropped low. The tone he used when firing an employee who'd stolen from the register. Quiet. Final. Absolute. You've got 3 seconds to release my employee. Then I'm pressing charges for assault, trespass, and civil rights violations. 1. Reeves's grip remained. 2. The cameras recorded. The witnesses watched. 3. Reeves released Maya's wrist. She pulled her arm back, cradling it against her chest. This isn't over. You're right. Johnson straightened his apron. It isn't. Because you're going to explain to a federal judge why you walked into my store without a warrant and put your hands on a 22-year-old woman who was born 6 miles from here. The customers closed ranks around Register 3, not threatening, witnessing, documenting, refusing to let the agents isolate their targets. Mrs. Patterson stood at Johnson's right shoulder. 73 years of shopping at this store, and she wasn't about to watch it violated. I remember when Maya was born. Dorothy brought pictures to the store, showed everyone. That baby has been part of this family since day one. Another customer, James Crawford, retired postal worker, stepped forward. I've known Hal Johnson for 30 years. He hired my nephew when no one else would give the kid a chance. You think he'd employ someone illegally? You don't know this man. The employees had gathered behind the registers. Deshaun from stock, Maria from produce, Thomas from the butcher counter. The 23 people who kept Johnson's family market running, standing together without being asked. Detective Williams hadn't moved from his position near Register 4. His presence, the authority of 30 years with Atlanta PD, created a space the agents couldn't easily occupy. Agents, I'm going to suggest you leave this establishment. You have no warrant. You have no legal basis to detain anyone here. What you do have is approximately 20 witnesses to civil rights violations, assault, and unlawful entry. Reeves's partner was already moving toward the door. Victor, we're leaving. We're not leaving until. We're leaving. Now. This is over. He was at the entrance, holding the door open. The particular urgency of someone who understood exactly how badly this had gone. Reeves stood alone in the checkout area, surrounded by customers, documented by cameras. His authority evaporated. This isn't finished. It is for today. Johnson's voice carried the calm of someone who had already won. Come back with a warrant. Come back with actual evidence. Come back with something other than an anonymous phone call and bad intentions. He gestured toward the door. Until then, get out of my store. Reeves walked out. His partner followed. The automatic doors closed behind them. For a moment, the store was silent. Then Mrs. Patterson began clapping. Others joined. Applause spreading through the checkout lanes, through the aisles, through the 23 employees and 30-odd customers who had just witnessed something they would never forget. Maya still stood behind Register 3, tears streaming down her face. Her wrist red where Reeves had grabbed her. Johnson turned and put his arm around her shoulders. You're okay. You're not going anywhere. Mr. Hal, I don't understand. Someone made a phone call. Someone lied about you. That's not your fault. But what if they come back? Then I'll be standing right here again. Same as today. Same as every day you've worked in this store. He looked at the gathered employees and customers. This is Johnson's family market. We've been here since 1962. We survived segregation. We survived urban renewal. We survived developers with million-dollar checks. His voice carried through the store. We're not going to be pushed around by agents without warrants and tips from liars. That's not who we are. That's not who we've ever been. Detective Williams approached the counter. Mr. Johnson, you're going to want to preserve that security footage. Every frame. I'd also recommend calling an attorney before end of business today. Already planned. Good. Because what happened here? That's going to end careers. And you're going to want documentation when it does. The FBI agents arrived the next morning. Not to investigate Johnson, to investigate Reeves. Johnson led them to his back office, where 62 years of history hung on the walls. My grandfather started this tradition in 1962. Every employee who's ever worked here gets a photograph. The wall stretched floor to ceiling. Black and white photos from the 60s. Color prints from the 70s and 80s. Digital prints from recent years. Faces spanning 6 decades of Atlanta's history. There's Dorothy Thompson. Started in 1990. Worked the same register her granddaughter works now. He pointed to a photograph of a woman in her 40s, green apron over a floral dress, smile bright despite the tired eyes. 20 years she worked here. Never missed a Christmas party. Never forgot a customer's name. He moved to a corkboard in the corner. The community bulletin board. Announcements. Lost dog flyers. Business cards. And there's Maya's birth announcement. A faded piece of paper. It's a girl. Maya Denise Thompson. Born August 14, 2002. Piedmont Atlanta Hospital. 7 pounds, 4 ounces. Grandmother Dorothy is over the moon. The FBI agent photographed everything. The wall. The bulletin board. The documentation that proved what a simple phone call could have verified. Mr. Johnson, who do you think made the anonymous tip? I have my suspicions. Care to share? There's a new grocery store that opened 6 blocks from here. Freshmart. Corporate chain. They've been trying to pull my customers away since they opened. You think a competitor reported your employee to ICE? I think someone wanted to cause problems for my store. Maya's been with me since she was 16. Everyone in this neighborhood knows her. If word got out that ICE was hauling employees away, it would damage your reputation. And my business. Which is exactly what certain people want. The agent made notes. We'll look into it. You do that. And while you're at it, Look into how Agent Reeves decided to act on an anonymous tip without any verification. How he walked into a private business without a warrant. How he grabbed a 22-year-old woman hard enough to leave bruises. We're investigating all of it. Good. Because that girl has been part of this store her whole life. Her grandmother built relationships with customers that we still benefit from today. Her mother trusts us to keep her daughter safe. He turned to face the agent directly. I've been turning down developers for 20 years. They offer me millions to sell this corner. I say no every time. You know why? Why? Because this neighborhood needs a grocery store more than I need money. Because these people, he gestured to the wall of photographs, deserve somewhere to work where they're treated with dignity. He looked at the photograph of Dorothy Thompson. Dorothy asked me to hire her granddaughter. Said Maya needed structure, needed responsibility, needed a chance. I gave her that chance. Watched her grow from a scared 16-year-old into someone I trust to run this store when I'm gone. His voice hardened. And some agent without a warrant thought he could walk in here and take her. That's not how this works. Not in my store. Not ever. The anonymous tip was traced within 72 hours. A burner phone, purchased at a gas station in Midtown. The call had lasted 43 seconds. Voice analysis and cell tower data identified the caller, Raymond Chun, 41, district manager for Fresh Mart's Southeast region. Chun had been complaining about Johnson's Family Market since his store opened. A corporate chain couldn't compete with 62 years of community loyalty. Customers preferred the neighborhood institution over the fluorescent anonymity of a national brand. His solution was to weaponize federal enforcement. The tip alleged that Johnson's employed multiple illegal aliens and was harboring criminals. No evidence. No specifics. Just enough to trigger a response from an agent who didn't believe in verification. Chin's phone records revealed the pattern. He had researched IC tip lines. He had noted which agents responded to anonymous calls without investigation. He had specifically targeted Maya because she was young, black, and visible at the front register. The assumption was simple. A black woman working at a grocery store probably wasn't American. The assumption was wrong. Agent Victor Reeves had responded to the tip within 4 hours. No check of employment records. No verification with the state. No basic investigative work. His personnel file explained why. 14 prior complaints for similar conduct. Warrantless entries, unverified tips, targeting minority employees at small businesses. All dismissed. All buried. All enabled by supervisors who valued enforcement numbers over constitutional compliance. His social media completed the picture. Posts about anchor baby workers taking jobs. Comments about businesses that harbored illegals. Membership in groups where agents shared strategies for cleaning up workplaces without paperwork. Text messages to fellow agents showed the methodology. Got a tip about a grocery store in Old Fourth Ward. Probably illegals on staff. Small businesses are easy. No corporate lawyers. Just grab whoever looks wrong. Owner tried to block me. Old guy. Threatened obstruction. The old guy had been right about everything. Reeves had been wrong about everything. And now both of them would face the consequences of their choices. Chin was arrested 3 weeks after the incident, filing false reports with federal agencies, conspiracy to deprive civil rights, tortious interference with business operations. His corporate employers terminated him immediately. Fresh Mart issued a statement distancing themselves from his individual actions. The statement didn't mention that Chun had been trying to eliminate their only real competition in the neighborhood. The federal grand jury convened 8 weeks after the incident. Reeves was indicted on civil rights violations, assault, unlawful entry, and deprivation of rights under color of law. Chin was indicted as a co-conspirator. Johnson provided testimony over 2 days. He brought the photographs, Dorothy Thompson at her register, Maya's birth announcement, the 62 years of community history that hung on his office wall. This store has survived everything Atlanta could throw at it. Segregation, white flight, urban renewal, developers. We're not going to be destroyed by an agent who couldn't be bothered to make a phone call before grabbing one of my people. Maya testified the following week. She described growing up in the store, her grandmother's legacy, the moment Reeves grabbed her wrist. I've worked there since I was 16. That store is my family. Mr. Hal is more than my boss. He's the man who gave me a chance when no one else would. The grand jury returned indictments within hours. The investigation expanded beyond the single incident. Reeves had conducted 43 enforcement actions over 6 years. 37 had targeted small businesses, grocery stores, restaurants, dry cleaners, the establishments where minority workers were visible and corporate lawyers were absent. 39 of those 43 targets were Black or Hispanic. 0 had resulted in actual immigration violations. Every single one had been released after verification proved they were exactly who they claimed to be. The pattern was systematic. Reeves responded to anonymous tips without verification. He entered private property without warrants. He grabbed employees without probable cause. And when owners objected, he threatened obstruction charges. The threats had worked until Harold Johnson. Previous business owners had been intimidated. They had let Reeves take their employees. They had believed that federal authority was absolute. They hadn't known that, "Where's your warrant?" was the question that could stop everything. Johnson had known. 62 years of family business had taught him that authority without documentation was just bullying with a badge. Digital forensics revealed Reeves's communication patterns. Small businesses are soft targets. No HR departments. No legal teams. Grab the visible ones. Registers, stock floors. Makes an impression. Owners complain, threaten obstruction. They always back down. They hadn't backed down at Johnson's Family Market. The investigation also uncovered a network of similar tips. Chen wasn't the only competitor weaponizing IC. Restaurant owners had reported rival establishments. Contractors had reported competing crews. Business disputes were being resolved through immigration enforcement. Reeves had facilitated it all, happy to respond to any tip that gave him numbers, happy to ignore verification requirements that would have revealed the fraud. His partner, Agent Lisa Monroe, had been present for 18 of those 43 actions. She had expressed doubts during several. She had been told to shut up and follow orders. Monroe cooperated fully with investigators. Her testimony detailed the pattern: tips received without verification, entries made without warrants, constitutional rights ignored as a matter of routine. "I knew it was wrong," she stated in her deposition. "I should have stopped it. I should have reported it. I followed orders instead." The FBI's analysis concluded that Reeves had systematically violated civil rights for at least 4 years. His supervisors had enabled him by dismissing complaints and rewarding enforcement numbers. The system had protected him until it couldn't anymore. Johnson's resistance had broken that protection. His refusal to move had created a confrontation that couldn't be buried. His security cameras had documented evidence that couldn't be dismissed. That old man, Reeves had texted a colleague after the incident. He wouldn't get out of the way. The old man had been the first person to successfully stand between Reeves and a victim. He wouldn't be the last. The federal courtroom in Atlanta filled to capacity. Neighborhood residents who had shopped at Johnson's for decades. Small business owners who had feared the same treatment. Media documenting a case that had become national news. Maya Thompson testified on the second day. She wore professional clothes, the outfit she had bought for job interviews, the future she was building with her Georgia State degree. "I was scanning groceries when they approached. Mrs. Patterson's weekly order. Same items every Thursday. The agent said I was in the country illegally. What was your response?" "I told him I was born here. He said that's what we need to verify." Then Mr. Hal came. "Describe what happened." "He stood between us. Asked where's your warrant." The agent said he didn't need one. She paused. Then he grabbed my wrist. Pulled me toward him across the counter. I've never been so scared. The security footage played on the courtroom screens. The confrontation. Johnson positioning himself as a barrier. Reeves calling him old man. The reach past him to grab Maya's arm. Harold Johnson testified next. Green apron over his flannel shirt, the same outfit he wore every day at the store. "My grandfather opened Johnson's Family Market in 1962, one of the first integrated grocery stores in Atlanta. He believed everyone deserved dignity. My father believed it. I believe it. What happened when you saw Agent Reeves approaching Maya?" "I did what my grandfather would have done. What my father would have done. I protected my employee." "Why didn't you step aside when Agent Reeves demanded it?" "Because he had no right to take her. No warrant. No evidence. Nothing but a phone call he never bothered to verify." He looked at the jury. "Maya's grandmother worked at my store for 20 years. I watched Maya grow up in those aisles. Her birth announcement is still on my bulletin board." He produced the faded paper. Passed it to the bailiff. "It's a girl. Maya Denise Thompson. August 14, 2002. Piedmont Atlanta Hospital. The announcement circulated through the jury box. That girl is American. That girl is family. And no agent was going to drag her out of my store without legal authority. Raymond Chin testified under subpoena. His corporate demeanor collapsed under cross-examination. You called ICE because you wanted to damage a competitor? I believe there might be. You believed nothing. You wanted Johnson's customers. You decided to use federal agents to destroy his reputation. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. Guilty on all counts. Reeves and Chin both. Reeves received 6 years federal prison. Enhanced for pattern of conduct, assault, and repeated constitutional violations. Chin received 3 years for conspiracy and filing false federal reports. Both were led from the courtroom in handcuffs. The civil settlement followed within 4 months. The Department of Homeland Security agreed to pay $8.4 million rather than face a trial that would expose years of systemic failure. Johnson directed the distribution from his back office, the wall of employee photographs watching over him. $3 million to establish the Dorothy Thompson Small Business Protection Fund, providing legal defense for store owners facing pretextual enforcement actions. $2 million to scholarships for first-generation college students in Old Fourth Ward, continuing the legacy of opportunity that the store had always represented. $1 million to civil rights organizations focused on immigration enforcement accountability. The remaining funds went to Maya. College covered. Business school covered. The startup capital for the small business she had always dreamed of opening. Mr. Howell, I can't accept. You can and you will. Your grandmother asked me to give you a chance. I gave you a job. Now I'm giving you a future. ICE entered a consent decree requiring warrants for all enforcement actions at private businesses. The policy Reeves had violated was now explicitly codified. Freshmart closed its Old Fourth Ward location 8 months after the verdict. The community had spoken with their wallets. They remembered what Chin had tried to do. Johnson's family market remained. Same corner. Same customers. Same family. Maya graduated from Georgia State 2 years later. Business administration degree with honors. She walked across the stage in a cap and gown, diploma in hand, her mother and Mr. Howell watching from the audience. The photograph went on the wall, right next to her grandmother Dorothy. She still works at the store on weekends. Register 3. The regulars still line up for her lane. She still remembers their names, their orders, the details that make shopping at Johnson's feel like visiting family. Harold Johnson turned 65 last spring. His children want him to retire. He tells them the same thing every time. Retire to what? This store is my life. These people are my family. He still opens at 7 a.m. every day. Still wears the green apron over his flannel shirt. Still turns down developers who wave million-dollar checks. The birth announcement is still on the bulletin board. Faded now. Protected by a frame that Johnson added after the trial. It's a girl. Maya Denise Thompson. American. Always was. Always will be. Some agents never learned that lesson. Harold Johnson had taught it the only way he knew how, by standing his ground and refusing to move. By being the old man who wouldn't get out of the way. By protecting his people the same way his grandfather had in 1962, the same way his father had for 30 years after that, the same way he would until someone else took over the apron. The store endures. The community endures. The lesson endures. Where's your warrant? The question that cost ICE $8.4 million. The question that saved a young woman from being dragged away. The question Harold Johnson will ask again, if anyone is ever foolish enough to try.
Sir, step aside. We're here for her. We have information that she's in this country illegally.
I'm not stepping anywhere. This is my hospital. Where's your warrant?
We don't need a warrant for immigration enforcement.
You absolutely do need a warrant to enter my facility and detain my staff.
Last warning, move aside or you'll be charged with obstruction.
Where's your warrant? Dr. Michael Sullivan asked the question that would cost ICE $11.9 million. The agents had come for Adrienne Hayes, 8-year emergency nurse, Georgia Nurse of the Year, the woman her colleagues called the heart of the ER. They claimed to have information she was in the country illegally. The information was a lie. The nurse was born in Macon, Georgia. Her father had worked at the Macon post office for 35 years. She had degrees from Emory and Georgia State. But Agent Derek Morrison didn't have a warrant, didn't have probable cause, didn't have anything except an anonymous tip and the assumption that a black nurse in scrubs might not belong. Dr. Sullivan, Chief Medical Officer, former Army trauma surgeon, the man who once told a state senator to get out of my ER, positioned himself between the agents and his nurse. This is my hospital. You're not taking anyone without proper legal authority. The security cameras captured everything. The staff gathering behind their CMO. The agents threatening obstruction charges. The moment federal authority met someone who wouldn't bend. $11.9 million. Career destroyed. And a chief medical officer who proved that protecting your people isn't just policy, it's principle. Grady Memorial Hospital never slept. The Level 1 Trauma Center served Atlanta's most critical patients, gunshot wounds, car accidents, the emergencies that couldn't wait for morning. The emergency department ran on 12-hour shifts, and the overnight crew had seen everything the city could deliver. Adrian Hayes had worked the 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. shift, 12 hours that had included 3 trauma codes, a pediatric cardiac arrest, and the steady stream of patients that defined emergency medicine at a major urban hospital. The pediatric code had been the hardest. 4-year-old boy, drowning incident. They had worked him for 47 minutes before achieving return of spontaneous circulation. He was upstairs now, in the pediatric ICU, alive because of the team that had refused to stop. Hayes had led that team. Senior charge nurse. 8 years in the emergency department. The certifications that proved her expertise, CEN, TCRN, hung on her wall at home, next to the Georgia Nurse of the Year plaque from 2022. Her scrubs still carried the evidence of the night. The particular exhaustion that came from 12 hours of constant crisis. The satisfaction that came from knowing she had made a difference. Her twins, Zoe and Zara, 6 years old, would be waking up soon at her mother's house. Tuesday mornings meant pancakes and cartoons before the school bus arrived. Hayes would sleep for a few hours, then pick them up, hear about their day, pretend she wasn't exhausted. Single motherhood and emergency nursing required a particular kind of strength. Hayes had found it in the same place her parents had found theirs, in faith, in family, in the knowledge that hard work meant something. Her mother had taught elementary school in Macon for 30 years. Her father had sorted mail at the Macon post office for 35. The Hayes family understood service. They understood showing up. Adrian had shown up every shift for 8 years. Never late. Never absent without cause. The nurse her colleagues called when cases got complicated, when patients got difficult, when the night seemed like it would never end. The heart of the ER. That's what they called her. Not because she was soft. Emergency nurses couldn't afford softness, but because she cared in ways that patients remembered. She was walking toward the emergency department exit at 6:47 a.m. when she noticed the 2 men approaching. Olive tactical vests, 10 cargo pants, black boots, ice insignia visible on their shoulders. They were walking directly toward her. Hayes paused. The automatic doors were 10 feet away. Freedom was 10 feet away. Her car in the parking garage. Her mother's house. Her daughter's. The men stopped in front of her. Adrian Hayes? Yes. We need you to come with us. Adrian had shown up every shift for 8 years. Never late. Never absent without cause. The nurse her colleagues called when cases got complicated, when patients got difficult, when the night seemed like it would never end. The heart of the ER. That's what they called her. Not because she was soft. Emergency nurses couldn't afford softness, but because she cared in ways that patients remembered. She was walking toward the emergency department exit at 6:47 a.m. when she noticed the 2 men approaching. Olive tactical vests, 10 cargo pants, black boots, ice insignia visible on their shoulders. They were walking directly toward her. Hayes paused. The automatic doors were 10 feet away. Freedom was 10 feet away. Her car in the parking garage. Her mother's house. Her daughter's. The men stopped in front of her. Adrian Hayes? Yes. We need you to come with us. Chapter 2. The Entrance. 650 words. Agent Derek Morrison positioned himself between Hayes and the exit doors. His partner flanked to the right, the formation that would provide a second angle on everything that followed. Ma'am, we have information that you're in this country illegally. We're going to need you to come with us for processing. Hayes stared at him. The words didn't compute. Couldn't compute. She had just spent 12 hours saving lives in an American hospital. She had been born in an American city. She was as American as the flag flying over the building behind her. Illegally? I was born in Macon, Georgia. That's what we need to verify. Verify. Her voice carried the exhaustion of the shift and the confusion of the accusation. I'm a registered nurse. I work here. I've worked here for 8 years. Employment doesn't prove citizenship. My birth certificate proves citizenship. My nursing license proves citizenship. The background check this hospital conducted when they hired me proves citizenship. Morrison's expression didn't change. The hospital security camera, mounted above the emergency entrance, captured his posture. Aggressive. Certain. Ma'am, we have information. We need to verify your status. Information from who? That's confidential. You're accusing me of being an illegal immigrant based on confidential information? What information? What source? We received a tip. A tip. Hayes let the word hang in the air. Someone called you and said I'm illegal, and you came to my workplace to detain me? Without checking anything first. We're checking now. No, you're not checking. You're detaining. Those are different things. The automatic doors behind Morrison opened. A security guard, Marcus Webb, 15 years at Grady, stepped through. He had been watching the monitors. He had seen the confrontation developing. Ms. Hayes? Everything okay? These agents are claiming I'm an illegal immigrant. Webb's face shifted. He knew Hayes. Everyone at Grady knew Hayes. She had worked on his mother's case 3 years ago. Chest pain that turned out to be a heart attack. Hayes had recognized the signs, called the code, saved her life. That's not possible. She's been here for years. Sir, this is a federal matter. She saved my mother's life. She's not illegal anything. Step back, sir. Webb didn't step back. He pulled out his radio. Security to emergency entrance. We have a situation. ICE agents attempting to detain staff. Morrison's face flushed. Sir, interfering with federal officers is a crime. I'm not interfering. I'm documenting. And I'm calling for backup. We don't need your backup. We need this woman to come with us. She's not going anywhere until someone with authority tells me what's happening. The radio crackled. Voices responding. Security personnel moving toward the entrance. And somewhere in the hospital, Dr. Michael Sullivan's phone buzzed with an urgent message. CMO to emergency entrance immediately. ICE attempting to detain Hayes. Sullivan was out of his office in 15 seconds. The elevator would take too long. He took the stairs, 4 flights, the same stairs he had run during his trauma surgery days when seconds meant survival. He pushed through the stairwell door on the ground floor. He could see the entrance from here. The agents, Hayes in her scrubs, Webb blocking the path. He had spent 35 years in medicine. He had operated in Army field hospitals during Desert Storm, under fire, with inadequate supplies, on soldiers who should have died. He had built a career on protecting people. He wasn't about to stop now. The automatic doors opened as he approached. The Atlanta morning light spilled into the corridor. What exactly is happening here? Dr. Michael Sullivan stepped through the emergency entrance with the authority of someone who had commanded medical teams in war zones. 61 years old. Silver hair cropped short. White coat over a charcoal blazer and black slacks. The presence that had made surgeons, senators, and now federal agents reconsider their choices. I asked a question. What is happening here? Morrison turned. He saw the white coat, the chief medical officer badge, the expression that had survived Desert Storm and 3 decades of hospital politics. Sir, this is a federal matter. We're here for her. He gestured toward Hayes. We have information that she's in this country illegally. Sullivan positioned himself between Morrison and Hayes. The movement was deliberate, a physical barrier that the security cameras captured clearly. Information from whom? That's confidential. You're attempting to detain my staff member based on confidential information. What's your legal authority? ICE has broad authority to enforce immigration law. Do you have a warrant? The question landed in the hospital corridor like a surgical instrument. Precise, unavoidable. We don't need a warrant for immigration enforcement. You absolutely do need a warrant to enter my facility and detain my staff. Sir, this is Grady Memorial Hospital. It is a healthcare facility. Under Georgia law and federal regulations, you cannot conduct enforcement operations inside a healthcare facility without a judicial warrant. Do you have one? Morrison's face shifted. The certainty flickered. We have authority to detain individuals suspected of immigration violations. On the street, at the border, in locations where you have jurisdiction. This is a hospital. My hospital. And I'm asking you again, do you have a warrant? I don't need. Yes or no? Do you have a warrant authorizing you to enter this facility and detain Adrian Hayes? Silence. I'll take that as no. Sullivan turned slightly to address Hayes without moving from his protective position. Adrian, you don't have to go anywhere with these men. They have no legal authority to detain you without a warrant. Sir, you're interfering with federal officers. I'm exercising my authority as chief medical officer to protect my staff from unlawful detention. There's a difference. He turned back to Morrison. I've been running hospitals for 12 years. Before that, I spent 23 years as a trauma surgeon, including tours in Army field hospitals during Desert Storm. I've faced down situations that would give you nightmares. You don't intimidate me. We're not trying to intimidate. You showed up at my hospital at 6:47 a.m. to drag one of my nurses away based on anonymous information you refused to disclose. Without a warrant. Without probable cause. Without any of the legal protections that American citizens are entitled to. He stepped closer to Morrison. Adrian Hayes was born in Macon, Georgia. Her father worked at the post office for 35 years. She has degrees from Emory University and Georgia State. She has been a registered nurse at this hospital for 8 years. She was just named Georgia Nurse of the Year. His voice dropped. And you're trying to drag her away like a criminal because someone made a phone call. That's not enforcement. That's harassment. Morrison's partner had retreated slightly. His body cam captured his face, the doubt that his colleague refused to acknowledge. Sir, we have our orders. Your orders don't supersede the Constitution. Your orders don't supersede hospital policy. Your orders don't supersede basic human decency. Behind Sullivan, staff had begun gathering. Nurses emerging from the department. Doctors pausing in the corridor. The people who kept the emergency department running through every crisis. They were watching. They were documenting. And they were standing behind their CMO. The staff of Grady Memorial's emergency department formed a line behind Dr. Sullivan. Not organized. Not planned. Simply the organic response of people who recognized injustice and refused to stand silent. Dr. James Chun, emergency physician, 12 years at Grady. He had worked beside Hayes on the pediatric code just hours ago. Nurse practitioner Keisha Williams, who had trained under Hayes when she first joined the department. Respiratory therapist Miguel Santos, who had seen Hayes talk a panicking asthma patient through a crisis with nothing but her voice and her presence. Paramedic Sarah Mitchell, who had brought countless patients through those doors and watched Hayes receive every one with the same competence and compassion. 15 people. Then 20. The corridor filling with medical professionals who knew Adrian Hayes, who had worked beside her, who understood exactly what was happening. Sir, step aside. We're here for her. Morrison's voice had hardened. His patience was ending. His hand moved toward his belt, toward the handcuffs that hung there. I'm not stepping anywhere. This is my hospital. Where's your warrant? The question came from Dr. Chun, repeated from behind Sullivan. The same words. The same demand. Where's your warrant? Nurse Williams. Echoing. Where's your warrant? The phrase rippled through the gathering staff. A chorus of healthcare workers who had spent their careers protecting people, who understood that protection sometimes meant standing in the way of power. We don't need a warrant for immigration enforcement. You need a warrant to enter this facility. Sullivan's voice cut through the chorus. This is a healthcare institution. We have patients inside who are protected by privacy laws. We have staff who are protected by labor laws. You cannot simply walk in here and take people. Sir, last warning. Move aside or you'll be charged with obstruction. Obstruction of what? You have no warrant. You have no probable cause. You have an anonymous tip about a woman who was born in Georgia, educated in Georgia, and has served this hospital for 8 years. He stood his ground. I've faced down insurgent fire in Iraq. I've operated on soldiers while mortars landed outside the tent. You think the threat of obstruction charges is going to make me abandon my staff? Morrison reached for his handcuffs. You're being detained for interfering with federal officers. Then you'll have to detain all of us. Dr. Chin stepped forward. Beside Sullivan. Shoulder to shoulder. You'll have to detain me too. Nurse Williams stepped forward. And me? Santos. Mitchell. Others whose names would later fill the witness list. 23 medical professionals stood between Morrison and Hayes. 23 people who had chosen healthcare because they believed in protecting others. 23 witnesses with phones raised, documenting everything. Morrison's partner had gone pale. Derek, we should call this in. This isn't. We're not equipped for this. Shut up. There are 20 people recording us. This is going to be everywhere. I said shut up. Sullivan watched the exchange. The fracture between the partners. The doubt that was finally breaking through the certainty. Agent Morrison, I'm going to give you one opportunity to end this without consequences. Leave this hospital. Verify your information through proper channels. If you have legitimate cause to investigate Adrian Hayes, come back with a warrant signed by a federal judge. I don't need a judge's permission. In America, you do? That's how this works. That's how it's always worked. He held out his hand. I'm Dr. Michael Sullivan, Chief Medical Officer. 35 years of service to medicine. And I'm telling you, as someone who has never backed down from a fight in my entire career, you will not take my nurse. Morrison stared at the hand, at the staff behind him, at the cameras recording from every angle. Then he reached past Sullivan. Morrison's hand closed around Hayes' arm before Sullivan could block him. The grab was aggressive, the grip of someone who had decided that force would succeed where authority had failed. You're coming with me, Hayes cried out. Not from pain, from shock. The sudden violence after the long negotiation. The hand on her arm pulling her forward. Sullivan moved instantly. 35 years of surgical precision applied to a different kind of intervention. His hand closed around Morrison's wrist. Let go of her. You're obstructing. You're assaulting a healthcare worker. In a hospital. Without a warrant. Let go. The security camera captured the moment. Morrison's hand on Hayes' arm. Sullivan's hand on Morrison's wrist. The physical confrontation that transformed a civil rights violation into assault. Morrison pulled Hayes toward him. Sullivan held firm. Let go of her right now. She's coming with us. She's not going anywhere. You have no legal authority. You have no warrant. You have no right to put your hands on my staff. The staff behind Sullivan surged forward. Not to attack, to document, to witness, to ensure that whatever happened next would be seen by everyone. Dr. Chin's phone captured Morrison's face, the particular expression of someone whose control was slipping. Nurse Williams's phone captured Hayes, her arm in Morrison's grip, her face showing the fear that 8 years of emergency nursing hadn't prepared her for. Security guard Webb was on his radio. We need Atlanta police at emergency entrance. Federal agents assaulting staff. Repeat, federal agents assaulting staff. Morrison's partner had stopped trying to help. He stood frozen, the posture of someone watching his career collapse in real time. Derek, let her go. This isn't worth it. Shut up. Look around. 20 cameras. 30 witnesses. Atlanta PD is coming. Let her go. She's an illegal. She's a citizen. Look at her badge. Look at her credentials. She works here. The partner's voice cracked with desperation. Let her go before this gets worse. Sullivan spoke directly to Morrison. His voice had dropped to the register he used in operating rooms. Calm. Absolute. The voice that commanded life and death. Agent Morrison, you are assaulting a registered nurse who has committed no crime. You are doing so without a warrant, without probable cause, and in violation of this facility's status as a protected healthcare institution. He tightened his grip on Morrison's wrist. If you don't release her in the next 5 seconds, I will personally ensure that you face federal charges, civil liability, and the end of your career. You can't threaten. I'm not threatening. I'm informing. 5. Morrison's grip remained. 4. The staff pressed closer. 3. His partner stepped back, physically distancing himself from the confrontation. 2. Morrison looked at Sullivan. At the cameras. At the staff. At the hospital entrance that had become a battlefield. 1. His hand released Hayes' arm. She stumbled backward into the arms of her colleagues. Nurse Williams caught her. Dr. Chin steadied her. Morrison stood in the center of the corridor, surrounded by medical professionals, documented by cameras, his authority shattered. This isn't over. You're right. Sullivan's voice carried no triumph, only certainty. It isn't. Because by the time I'm done, you're going to wish you had never walked into my hospital. He turned to Webb. No one leaves until Atlanta police arrive. These men are going to explain exactly what they were doing here. Morrison's face had gone gray. His partner was already on the phone, not to ICE, but to a lawyer. The assault was documented. The violation was recorded. And the consequences were just beginning. The calls went out simultaneously. Hospital administration contacted the city attorney's office within 4 minutes of Morrison releasing Hayes' arm. The words "federal agents assaulting staff" triggered immediate response. The mayor's office received notification 6 minutes after that. The chief of staff, himself a former prosecutor, recognized the political and legal implications instantly. Media calls started at 7:15 a.m. WSB-TV, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, CNN's Atlanta Bureau. The phrase, "ICE agents detain nurse at Grady Memorial," spread across assignment desks like wildfire. By 7:30 a.m., the first news van arrived. By 7:45 a.m., there were 4. By 8 a.m., the story had gone national. Morrison and his partner remained at the hospital, not because they chose to, but because Atlanta police had arrived and were taking statements. The crime scene had been established. The witnesses had been identified. The investigation had begun. Hayes sat in Dr. Sullivan's office, wrapped in a blanket someone had brought, hands shaking around a cup of coffee she couldn't drink. "I don't understand." Her voice was quiet, shattered. "I was just leaving work. I was just going home to my daughters." Sullivan sat across from her. The adrenaline of the confrontation was fading, replaced by the familiar exhaustion of crises survived. "You didn't do anything wrong, Adrian. This wasn't about you." "Then what was it about?" "It was about someone making a phone call. Someone who decided you didn't belong here. Someone who weaponized federal agents against you." Hayes looked up. The realization was settling in. An anonymous tip. "Someone called IC about me." "Yes." "Who? What?" "We don't know yet, but we're going to find out." The hospital's legal counsel arrived at 8:12 a.m. Elena Rodriguez, corporate attorney, 15 years of healthcare law, the person who handled Grady's most sensitive legal matters. "I've spoken with the city attorney and our outside counsel. We're treating this as an assault on a hospital employee, a violation of healthcare facility protections, and a civil rights case." "What about the agents?" "Atlanta PD is handling the criminal investigation. FBI Civil Rights Division has been notified. The U.S. Attorney's Office is being briefed as we speak." Sullivan nodded. The machinery of justice was engaging, slowly, but inevitably. "What does Adrian need to do?" "Nothing right now. She's the victim. She cooperated with legitimate requests. She didn't resist. She didn't obstruct. She was assaulted by a federal agent without legal authority." Hayes looked up. "I need to call my mother. My daughters are going to see this on the news." "Of course. Take whatever time you need." Sullivan walked Hayes to a private office, away from the cameras, away from the chaos, away from the story that was already spreading across every screen in Atlanta. "Call your mother. Tell your girls that mommy is okay. Then get some rest. We're going to handle the rest." "Dr. Sullivan?" "Yes. Thank you. For standing in front of me. For not letting them take me." Sullivan's expression softened. The commander becoming, for a moment, simply a colleague. "That's what we do here, Adrian. We protect each other. We always have. We always will." He closed the door gently. Then he walked back to the emergency entrance, where the cameras were waiting, where the questions were multiplying, where the story of the warrant that never existed was about to become national news. "I'll make one statement. Then we're done until our attorneys advise otherwise." The cameras focused. The microphones extended. And Dr. Michael Sullivan prepared to tell the world what had happened in his hospital. The investigation revealed exactly how thin the pretext had been. The anonymous tip had been traced within 72 hours. A phone call from a burner purchased at a gas station indicator. The caller, later identified through voice analysis and cell tower data, was Gerald Whitmore, a 47-year-old accountant from Buckhead. Whitmore had been in Grady's emergency department 3 weeks earlier. His wife had presented with chest pain. The wait had been 4 hours, standard for a level 1 trauma center during a busy night, but unacceptable to a man who believed his wife's discomfort should have superseded everyone else's emergencies. The nurse who had triaged his wife was Adrian Hayes. Hayes had been professional, courteous. She had explained the wait times, provided updates, ensured that Mrs. Whitmore was monitored appropriately. The wife had been discharged with a diagnosis of acid reflux. Uncomfortable, but not life-threatening. Gerald Whitmore had decided that the wait was Hayes' fault. He had decided that her professionalism was attitude. He had decided that a black nurse had disrespected his wife. He had called ICE. The anonymous tip alleged that Hayes was an illegal immigrant using stolen credentials. No evidence. No basis. Just the rage of a man who believed a nurse should have prioritized his wife over dying patients. Agent Derek Morrison had responded without verification. No check of nursing board records. No call to the hospital. No basic investigative work that would have confirmed Hayes' citizenship in under 5 minutes. His case file showed a pattern of similar responses. 14 prior enforcement actions based on anonymous tips, all targeting Black or Hispanic professionals at healthcare facilities, schools, and government offices. All unfounded. All conducted without warrants or proper verification. His social media accounts completed the picture. Posts about anchor babies taking professional jobs. Comments about diversity quotas in healthcare. Membership in online groups where users shared strategies for reporting suspicious workers to immigration authorities. Text messages to fellow agents revealed the methodology. Got a tip about a nurse at Grady. Black, probably illegal. Worth checking out. Healthcare is full of them. Fake credentials everywhere. Easy bust. They're always scared. Just show up and they fold. Hayes hadn't folded. Sullivan hadn't let her. The FBI Civil Rights Division opened a formal investigation within the week. The charges being considered: deprivation of rights under color of law, assault, unlawful entry into a protected healthcare facility. Gerald Whitmore, the anonymous tipster, was also under investigation, filing false reports with federal agencies. Conspiracy to deprive civil rights. The weaponization of immigration enforcement against innocent Americans. Both men would face federal charges. But the investigation revealed something larger than individual misconduct. It revealed a system where anonymous tips could trigger enforcement actions without verification, where agents could enter hospitals and grab nurses based on phone calls they never checked, where the burden of proof fell on the accused rather than the accuser. That system was about to change. Dr. Sullivan provided testimony over 3 days. He described the confrontation with the precision that 35 years of medicine had honed. Every word, every gesture, every moment that had transformed an ordinary morning into a constitutional crisis. "I've spent my career protecting patients," he stated in his deposition. That morning, I learned that sometimes you have to protect staff too, from people who are supposed to be enforcing the law, but have forgotten what the law actually requires. The federal grand jury convened 8 weeks after the incident. Morrison was indicted on all counts. Whitmore was indicted on conspiracy charges. Both would face trial, and the system that had enabled them would face the scrutiny it had avoided for years. The federal courtroom in Atlanta drew national attention. A nurse nearly dragged from her hospital. A CMO who refused to step aside. The story had become a symbol of everything wrong with enforcement without oversight. Adrienne Hayes testified on the second day. She wore her nursing scrubs, the same seal blue she had worn the morning of the incident. Her hospital badge was clipped to her chest. Her credentials visible to everyone in the courtroom. I had just finished a 12-hour shift. We had 3 trauma codes that night. A 4-year-old boy who drowned. We brought him back. I was exhausted. I was ready to go home to my daughters. What happened when you reached the exit? Agent Morrison was waiting. He told me I was in the country illegally. He said he had information. Did you understand what he meant? No. I was born in Macon, Georgia. I've never lived anywhere else. I don't know any other country. The security footage was played for the jury. They watched Morrison approach. They watched Sullivan emerge through the doors. They watched the staff gather behind their CMO. They watched Morrison reach past Sullivan and grab Hayes' arm. "Ms. Hayes, what were you thinking when Agent Morrison grabbed you?" "I was thinking about my daughters. Zoe and Zara. They're 6 years old. They were waiting for me at my mother's house. I was thinking, if he takes me, who's going to tell them where mommy went?" She paused. The courtroom was silent. I've spent 8 years taking care of people in their worst moments. I've held hands with people who were dying. I've told families that their loved ones didn't make it. I never thought I would be the one being grabbed. Being taken. Dr. Sullivan testified next. He wore his white coat over a charcoal suit, the attire of authority that had defined his career. When I arrived at the entrance, I saw Agent Morrison blocking Adrienne's path. I saw the fear on her face, and I knew exactly what was happening. "What did you do?" I put myself between them. I asked the only question that mattered. "Where's your warrant?" What was the agent's response? He said he didn't need one. He was wrong. He looked at the jury. "I've spent 35 years in medicine. I served in Army field hospitals during Desert Storm. I've protected patients from infection, from injury, from death. That morning, I protected my nurse from an agent who had forgotten that authority comes with accountability." The hospital staff testified one by one. Dr. Chun described the pediatric code that Hayes had led hours before the confrontation. Nurse Williams described the mentor who had shaped her career. Security guard Webb described the nurse who had saved his mother's life. Gerald Whitmore, the anonymous tipster, testified under subpoena. His motivation crumbled under cross-examination. You called ICE because you were angry about a wait time? My wife was in pain. So you tried to have the nurse deported? I thought. I was told. You were told nothing. You assumed. You decided that a black nurse who didn't prioritize your wife must not be American. Whitmore had no answer. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. Morrison and Whitmore both. Hayes watched from the gallery as the verdicts were read. Her colleagues surrounded her, the same people who had formed a line in the hospital corridor, who had refused to let her face injustice alone. Justice had been delivered by the system they had forced to work. The sentencing hearing brought closure that the trial had only begun. Agent Morrison, you were entrusted with the authority to enforce immigration law. Instead, you used that authority to terrorize a healthcare worker at her place of employment. You did so without a warrant, without probable cause, and without any regard for the constitutional protections that every American is entitled to. The judge reviewed the pre-sentencing materials with visible contempt. When you grabbed Adrian Hayes, you weren't just assaulting a nurse. You were attacking the healthcare system itself. You were teaching every medical professional in this country that they might be targeted next. You were undermining public trust in both immigration enforcement and healthcare institutions. Morrison's sentence, 6 years federal prison. Enhanced for assault. Enhanced for violation of healthcare facility protections. Enhanced for the documented pattern of warrantless enforcement actions. Gerald Whitmore received 2 years for conspiracy and filing false federal reports. Both were led from the courtroom in handcuffs. The civil settlement followed within 3 months. The Department of Homeland Security agreed to pay $11.9 million rather than face a trial that would expose systemic failures across multiple field offices. Hayes directed the distribution with the precision she applied to emergency nursing. For $1 million to establish the Sullivan-Hayes Healthcare Workers Protection Fund, providing legal defense for medical professionals targeted by pretextual enforcement actions. $3 million to nursing scholarships at Emory University and Georgia State, ensuring that the next generation of nurses would have the support she had earned through struggle. $2 million to civil rights organizations focused on immigration enforcement accountability. The remaining funds secured her daughter's futures. College. Security. The stability that single motherhood and nursing salaries had never quite guaranteed. Dr. Sullivan received the American Hospital Association's Distinguished Service Award for his actions that morning. He accepted it at a ceremony that drew healthcare executives from across the country. I didn't do anything exceptional. I did what any leader should do when their people are threatened. I stood in the way. He looked at the audience. Every one of you has staff who depend on you. Staff who trust that when they come to work, they'll be protected. That trust is sacred. It's the foundation of everything we do. He held up the award. This belongs to everyone who stood behind me that morning. The doctors, the nurses, the technicians, the security guards, the people who said, "You'll have to detain all of us," and meant it. ICE entered a consent decree requiring warrants for all enforcement actions at healthcare facilities. The policy that Morrison had violated was now explicitly codified, backed by the legal precedent that Sullivan's refusal had established. Hayes returned to work 2 weeks after the incident. Same department, same shifts, same patients who needed the nurse her colleagues called the heart of the ER. Her twins started first grade that fall. They knew something had happened at Mommy's hospital, something that had put her face on television, something that had made people call her a hero. Hayes didn't feel like a hero. She felt like a nurse who had almost been taken from her children, who had been saved by colleagues who refused to look away. Every morning, she walked through the same emergency entrance where Morrison had grabbed her arm. The same doors, the same corridor, the same hospital where she had spent 8 years saving lives. The security camera still recorded from above. The red, emergency sign still glowed. The staff still gathered for shift change. But something had changed. A precedent had been set. A line had been drawn. Where's your warrant? The question that had cost ICE $11.9 million. The question that had protected a nurse from agents without authority. The question that Dr. Michael Sullivan would ask again, if anyone was ever foolish enough to try. No one had been. No one would be. Some lessons, once taught, are remembered.
Morning. You fellas lost? Need directions somewhere?
Actually, we're looking for you. We got an anonymous tip about an illegal worker at this station.
That must be a mistake. I'm the captain here. I worked at this station for 20 years, my friend.
I'm not your friend. You need to prove you're legally authorized to work at
The crew of Station 17 watched from the bay doors as ICE agents approached their captain. They had served under Jerome Washington for years, some for over a decade. They had followed him into burning buildings, trusted him with their lives, trained under his command. They knew his father had served at the same station. They knew his grandfather had been one of the first black firefighters in Atlanta. They knew he had been born 6 blocks away and had never lived anywhere else. And they watched as Agent Kyle Braddock demanded their captain prove he was legally authorized to work in this country. They watched as Washington showed his credentials and was dismissed. They watched as he explained his family history and was ignored. They watched as handcuffs came out. And that's when Lieutenant Marcus Chin stepped forward with his phone already recording and said the words that would appear in every news report. You're about to handcuff a man who's saved more lives than you'll ever meet. And we're all witnesses. $9.8 million. Federal conviction. And a crew that stood behind their captain, the same way he had always stood in front of them. Station 17 sat on Boulevard Northeast in the old 4th Ward, the neighborhood that had shaped Atlanta's civil rights history, the neighborhood where Martin Luther King Jr. was born, the neighborhood where Jerome Washington had spent his entire life. The morning shift change happened at 7:30 a.m. Captain Washington arrived 8 minutes early, as he always did. His black Ford F-150 pulled into the side lot at 7:22 a.m. By 7:38 a.m., he was standing in front of the station greeting his crew. 20 years with Atlanta Fire Rescue. 8 years commanding Station 17. 3 Medals of Valor hanging in the station's trophy case. 200 firefighters trained at the academy. A career built on running toward danger while everyone else ran away. His father, Jerome Washington Sr., had served at this same station for 30 years before retiring in 1998. The photograph still hung in the common room. A younger version of the same face, the same captain's bars, the same pride. His grandfather, Samuel Washington, had been one of the first black firefighters hired by the Atlanta Fire Department in 1963. The integration had been contentious. The acceptance had been slow. But the Washingtons had stayed, had served, had earned their place through decades of sacrifice. 3 generations. 60 years. 1 station. This Tuesday morning, Captain Washington wore his crisp navy blue uniform shirt with gold captain's bars on the collar. His radio was clipped to his belt. His crew was preparing for the shift, Engineer Davis checking the rigs, Lieutenant Chun reviewing the morning briefing, firefighters Morrison and Jackson washing equipment in the bay. The 2 men approached from the street. Olive tactical vests, 10 cargo pants, black boots, ICE insignia visible on their shoulders. Washington noticed them before they reached the station. The particular walk of officers with purpose. The scanning that preceded confrontation. He assumed they needed directions. The neighborhood had changed over the years. Gentrification bringing new residents who didn't know the streets the way he did. Morning. His voice carried the warmth of someone who had spent 20 years as a public servant. You fellas lost? Need directions somewhere. Agent Kyle Braddock stopped 5 feet from the captain. His partner positioned himself at an angle, the formation that would provide a second bodycam perspective. Actually, we're looking for you. Washington's expression shifted slightly. Curiosity replacing hospitality. Looking for me? What can I help you with? We got an anonymous tip about an illegal alien working at this station. The words landed on the concrete apron of Station 17, in front of the bay doors where 2 gleaming red fire engines waited, while the crew of firefighters Washington had commanded for 8 years watched from inside. An illegal alien? That's correct. We need to verify the immigration status of personnel here. Washington looked at the agents. At his station. At the 60 years of Washington family history that surrounded him. I'm the captain here. I've worked at this station for 20 years, my friend. Braddock's eyes scanned Washington's uniform. The captain's bars. The Atlanta Fire Rescue patches. The radio. The name tag that read J. Washington. Anyone can buy a uniform online. We need to see documentation proving you're legally authorized to work in this country. Documentation. Washington repeated the word with the calm that 20 years of emergency response had made instinctive. You're asking me for papers. At my own fire station. We're conducting an investigation based on a tip. An anonymous tip. The source is confidential. The source is wrong. I'm Captain Jerome Washington. I've been with Atlanta Fire Rescue for 20 years. I was born 6 blocks from here. Braddock's expression didn't change. His partner's Bodycam, Axon Body 2, timestamp 7 hours, 38 minutes, and 47 seconds, captured his posture. Skeptical. Certain. Everyone has a story. This isn't a story. This is documented fact. My personnel file is inside that station. My birth certificate is on file with the city. My entire career is a matter of public record. Records can be falsified. My records haven't been falsified. I've worked for the city of Atlanta for 2 decades. I've been background checked, drug tested, and vetted more times than you've probably conducted investigations. Inside the bay, Lieutenant Chun had stopped what he was doing. Engineer Davis had set down his clipboard. The crew was watching through the open doors, the particular attention of people witnessing something wrong. Sir, I'm going to need you to produce identification. I have identification. I have a Georgia driver's license. I have a city employee ID. I have credentials that prove exactly who I am. Washington reached slowly toward his back pocket. The movement of someone who understood how officers could interpret sudden gestures. He produced his wallet, extracted his driver's license, held it out. Jerome Elijah Washington. This address is 3 miles from here. I've lived in Atlanta my entire life. Braddock examined the license with theatrical suspicion. This proves residency. It doesn't prove citizenship. My birth certificate proves citizenship. I was born at Grady Memorial Hospital. The midwife who delivered me still lives in this neighborhood. Her name is Mrs. Henrietta Collins. She's 87 years old. She'll vouch for me. I don't verify identities through elderly witnesses. Then how do you verify them? Because I'm offering you every piece of evidence a reasonable person would need. At the field office. We can verify everything there. I'm not going to any field office. I have a 24-hour shift that started 8 minutes ago. I have a crew depending on me. I have a city that pays me to protect it. Braddock's partner spoke for the first time, quietly, directed at his colleague. Kyle, maybe we should check with the fire department. We'll verify through proper channels. He's showing us credentials. He says he's the captain. Anyone can claim to be the captain. That's why we verify. Washington looked at the partner. At his body cam. At the doubt visible in his posture. What's your name? Agent Reeves. Agent Reeves, your partner is about to make a serious mistake. I'm giving both of you the opportunity to make a phone call, verify my identity, and walk away from this without consequences. Sir, we're just following up on a tip. A tip from who? Did you verify the source? Did you check whether the information was credible before you drove to a fire station and accused a captain of being an illegal alien? Silence. You didn't verify anything, did you? You got a phone call about a black man at a fire station, and you came straight here without doing basic investigative work. Braddock stepped closer. We're going to need you to come with us. I'm not going anywhere. Washington's voice dropped to the register he used when commanding scenes. Calm, authoritative, absolute. And before you do something you can't undo, let me tell you exactly who you're dealing with. He gestured to the station behind him. I was born 6 blocks from here. Grady Memorial Hospital. December 14th, 1976. My mother was in labor for 16 hours. Mrs. Henrietta Collins delivered me because the doctor was busy with another patient. He pointed to the photograph visible through the station windows, his father in dress uniform, captain's bars gleaming. My father was a firefighter at this station for 30 years. Jerome Washington Sr. He retired in 1998. His retirement ceremony was held right here, in this bay, with 300 people in attendance. He let the word settle. My grandfather was one of the first black firefighters hired by the Atlanta Fire Department. 1963, 6 years before I was born. Samuel Washington. There's a plaque inside that station with his name on it. Braddock's face showed nothing, but his partner's expression had shifted, the recognition of someone hearing a history that couldn't be fabricated. 3 generations of Washingtons have served this city from this station. 60 years of family history. And you're standing here asking me to prove I'm American. Family histories don't verify immigration status. My family history is American history. My grandfather integrated this department. My father commanded this station. I've served this city for 20 years, longer than you've probably been in law enforcement. Sir, I've earned 3 medals of valor. Do you know what that means? It means I've risked my life to save people. It means I've gone into buildings that were about to collapse and carried people out. It means I've done things that most people only see in movies. He held up his hand, showing the scarring on his palm. This is from the Buckhead Grand Hotel fire in 2009. I pulled 9 people out of that building. The ceiling collapsed 20 seconds after I got the last guest through the door. He touched his left shoulder. This is from a warehouse collapse in 2017. I went back for 2 of my firefighters who were trapped. Took a beam across the shoulder. Spent 6 weeks in physical therapy. He looked Braddock directly in the eyes. I've bled for this city. I've sacrificed for this city. And you're asking me to prove I belong here. Sir, regardless of your service record, my service record is why I belong here. My service record is why I'm standing in this uniform, at this station, commanding this crew. Not because of paperwork, because of what I've done. Inside the bay, the crew had moved closer to the doors. Lieutenant Chun had his phone in his hand. Engineer Davis stood with arms crossed, watching. You got an anonymous tip. Did you consider that it might be false? Did you consider that someone might be targeting me? Did you consider that the tip itself might be the crime? We investigate all tips. You investigate. You verify. You confirm before you accuse. That's how legitimate law enforcement works. I don't need a fire captain telling me how to do my job. Apparently you do. Because a first-year recruit at the fire academy knows you verify information before you act on it. You don't roll up to someone's workplace and accuse them of being illegal based on a phone call you didn't check. Braddock reached for his handcuffs. You're being detained pending verification of your status. You're making a career-ending mistake. That's what everyone says. I'm not everyone. And in about 30 seconds, you're going to understand exactly why. Lieutenant Marcus Chin stepped out of the bay doors before Braddock's hand reached the cuffs. His phone was already raised. Recording. The screen showing a clear view of both agents and his captain. You're about to handcuff a man who's saved more lives than you'll ever meet. Braddock turned. Behind Chun, the entire crew of Station 17 was emerging. 8 firefighters in navy blue uniforms, several with phones raised, all watching with the particular intensity of people who would not stand by in silence. And we're all witnesses. Sir, step back. This is a federal matter. This is our captain. This is our station. And you're about to do something that every camera here is going to document. Engineer Davis moved to Chin's left. His voice carried the growl of a 23-year veteran. Captain Washington trained me 20 years ago, when I was a scared recruit who didn't know which end of a hose to hold. He made me the firefighter I am. Firefighter Morrison stepped forward on Chin's right. He pulled me out of a structure fire in 2019. Roof came down. I was trapped. He went back in when everyone else said it was too dangerous. Firefighter Jackson joined the line. His father trained my father. That's 2 generations of Washingtons teaching 2 generations of Jacksons how to save lives. The crew formed a semicircle behind their captain. Not threatening. Not aggressive. Simply present. Simply witnessing. Simply refusing to let this happen in silence. Braddock's partner had taken several steps back. His bodycam captured his face, the expression of someone recognizing catastrophe. Kyle, maybe we should. Stay out of this. There are 8 witnesses. 8 cameras. This is going to be documented from every angle. I don't care about cameras. I care about verifying status. Chun lowered his phone slightly, just enough to speak directly to Braddock. His status is captain. His status is 20 years of service. His status is 3 medals of valor. His status is the son and grandson of firefighters who served this station before he was born. That doesn't prove citizenship. What would prove it? What piece of paper would satisfy you? Because I'm looking at a man who has bled for this city, who has run into burning buildings while everyone else ran out, who has saved lives that you'll never know about. What documentation proves citizenship better than that? Braddock's hand closed around his handcuffs. He's being detained. Then you're detaining all of us. Because we're not going to stand here and watch you humiliate our captain. Chin stepped forward. Davis stepped forward. Morrison and Jackson stepped forward. The entire crew moved as one, not to obstruct, but to witness, to document, to ensure that whatever happened next would be seen by everyone. Captain Washington. Chin addressed his commander directly. Whatever happens, we've got you. Every camera here is recording. Every firefighter here will testify. You're not alone. Washington looked at his crew, at the men and women he had trained, commanded, and led into danger for years. At the family that Station 17 had become. Stand down. All of you. Document everything, but don't interfere. Let him do what he's going to do. Captain, that's an order. I've been through worse than this. What matters is that every camera catches what happens next. He turned back to Braddock. Go ahead. Do what you came to do. And understand that you're doing it in front of 8 witnesses, 8 cameras, and 60 years of Washington family history. Braddock grabbed his arm. Turn around. Washington turned. His hands moved behind his back. The handcuffs clicked. And 8 firefighters stood in the morning sun, phones raised, watching their captain detained in front of his own station. Atlanta Fire Rescue Chief Patricia Okonkwo was in her vehicle within 90 seconds of receiving Lieutenant Chen's call. Chief, you need to get to Station 17. Now, what's happening? ICE agents just handcuffed Captain Washington. In front of the station. In front of all of us. They did what? They're claiming they got an anonymous tip about an illegal alien. They're detaining him for verification. Jerome Washington? Whose father served at that station? Whose grandfather was one of the first black firefighters in the department? Yes, ma'am. I'm on my way. The chief's SUV covered the distance from headquarters to Station 17 in 11 minutes. She arrived to find a scene that would define her administration's response to civil rights violations. Her captain in handcuffs. 2 ICE agents beside a federal vehicle. 8 firefighters with phones raised. The morning sun illuminating the Atlanta Fire Rescue logo on the station's facade. She was out of the vehicle before the engine fully stopped. What the hell is going on here? Braddock turned. He saw the chief's vehicle. The insignia. The woman approaching with the particular authority of someone who commanded thousands of personnel. Ma'am, this is a federal matter. That man is my captain. Jerome Washington. 20 years of service. 3 medals of valor. What possible reason do you have for putting him in handcuffs? We received a tip about an undocumented individual. A tip? You handcuffed one of my most decorated officers based on a tip. We're verifying his status. His status is verified. I verified it myself when I promoted him to captain 8 years ago. I verified it when I pinned his 3rd Medal of Valor on his chest. I verified it every time I've signed his performance evaluations for 2 decades. She stopped directly in front of Braddock. I want your badge number. I want your supervisor's name. And I want my captain uncuffed right now. Ma'am, I can't. You can. You detained a city employee at his workplace based on an unverified anonymous tip. You did so without contacting the department, without checking personnel records, without doing any of the basic verification that your job requires. She produced her phone. I'm calling the mayor. I'm calling the city attorney. And I'm calling every news outlet in Atlanta. By the time I'm done, your face will be on every screen in this city. You can't threaten. I'm not threatening. I'm informing you of what's about to happen. You've made a choice. Now you get to live with the consequences. Her fingers moved across the phone screen. Jerome. She addressed Washington directly, her voice softening. Are you injured? No, ma'am. Just detained. We're going to fix this. Every camera here has documented what happened. Every firefighter here is a witness. This ends today. She looked at Chun. Lieutenant, has anyone contacted the media? Not yet, Chief. Do it now. CNN, WSB, AJC. All of them. Tell them there's a story at Station 17. Braddock's face had gone pale. His partner had retreated to the vehicle, the posture of someone trying to create distance from catastrophe. Ma'am, if you'll just let us verify. Verify what? His birth certificate is on file with the city. His personnel record goes back 20 years. His father's service record goes back 50 years. His grandfather's integration of this department is documented in the city archives. She stepped closer. What more verification do you need? What piece of paper would satisfy you that a man who has saved more lives than you've probably ever met is actually American? Braddock had no answer. That's what I thought. The investigation that followed would expose exactly how thin the pretext had been. The anonymous tip was traced within 48 hours. A burner phone, purchased with cash at a convenience store in Cobb County. The call had lasted 37 seconds. The voice, later identified through audio analysis, belonged to a man named Derek Whitman, a resident of Marietta with a documented history of making false reports to IC. Whitman had made 7 prior calls to the ICE tip line. All had targeted black professionals. A doctor at Emory, an engineer at Georgia Tech, a teacher at a Fulton County elementary school. All had been unfounded. All had been filed and forgotten. The pattern was clear. Whitman was weaponizing immigration enforcement against black people he decided didn't belong in professional positions. But Whitman hadn't acted alone. The investigation revealed that he had found Captain Washington's name through a neighborhood Facebook group. A post celebrating the station's anniversary had included photos of the crew. Whitman had seen Washington's face and decided that a black fire captain warranted a phone call to ICE. Agent Kyle Braddock had received the tip and responded without verification. No check of fire department personnel records. No call to the station. No basic investigative work that would have confirmed Washington's 20-year employment in under 5 minutes. His case file showed a pattern of similar responses. 12 prior investigations based on anonymous tips, all targeting black or Hispanic professionals, all unfounded, all conducted without proper verification. His social media accounts completed the picture. Posts mocking diversity hires in public safety. Comments about certain people taking jobs they hadn't earned. Membership in online groups where users shared strategies for reporting suspicious minorities to immigration authorities. Text messages to fellow agents revealed the ideology. Got another tip about a fire captain. Probably affirmative action. Worth checking out. These diversity hires think a uniform makes them American. Easy verification. If they're legit, no harm done. If they're not, we got one. The no harm done philosophy had guided Braddock's approach. The assumption that false positives were acceptable. The belief that the burden of proving citizenship fell on anyone he decided to investigate. Captain Washington's personnel file told a different story than Braddock had imagined. Born December 14, 1976. Grady Memorial Hospital. Birth certificate on file with Fulton County since 1976. Hired by Atlanta Fire Rescue on March 3, 2004. Background check completed. Citizenship verified. Social Security number confirmed. Promoted to engineer, 2009. Promoted to lieutenant, 2014. Promoted to captain, 2016. 3 Medals of Valor. Firefighter of the Year, 2015. Fire Instructor 2 certification. Hazmat Technician certification. Every document verified. Every record legitimate. Every piece of evidence confirming what Washington had told Braddock from the first moment. He was exactly who he claimed to be. The FBI Civil Rights Division opened an investigation within 72 hours. The charges being considered: deprivation of rights under color of law, conspiracy to violate civil rights, false imprisonment. Derek Whitman, the man who had made the call, was also under investigation. Filing false reports with federal agencies. Conspiracy to deprive civil rights. The weaponization of immigration enforcement against innocent Americans. Both men would face federal charges. Both men would pay for what they had done. But the investigation revealed something larger than individual misconduct. It revealed a system where anonymous tips could trigger enforcement actions without verification, where agents could handcuff American citizens based on phone calls they never checked, where the burden of proof fell on the accused rather than the accuser. That system was about to change. The full scope of Braddock's conduct emerged through digital forensics that left nothing hidden. 12 prior investigations over 4 years. All based on anonymous tips. All targeting minorities. All unfounded. A black surgeon at Grady Memorial Hospital, detained in the parking garage for 40 minutes before verification confirmed her American citizenship. A Hispanic professor at Georgia State University, questioned in his office in front of students before department records proved his status. A black attorney at a downtown firm, stopped on the street and asked for documentation while walking to court. Each one had been released after verification. Each one had filed complaints. Each complaint had been dismissed as proper procedure or good faith investigation. The pattern was invisible in isolation. Documented together, it revealed systematic targeting that had terrorized innocent professionals for years. Braddock's stop records showed the methodology. He responded exclusively to tips about minorities in professional settings. He never investigated tips about white individuals. He never verified sources before responding. He never checked employer records before confronting targets. His text messages showed the philosophy. Better safe than sorry. If they're legal, they'll understand. These people should be grateful we're being thorough. One verified illegal makes up for 100 false positives. The false positives were American citizens. Doctors, lawyers, teachers, firefighters. People whose only crime was being black or Hispanic in positions that Braddock decided they didn't deserve. His partner, Agent Reeves, was interviewed separately. His cooperation would determine whether he faced charges or merely termination. Did you believe Captain Washington's credentials were legitimate? I had doubts about the investigation from the beginning. Did you express those doubts? I suggested we verify with the fire department. Kyle refused. When Chief Okonkwo arrived and confirmed Captain Washington's identity, what went through your mind? Silence. Agent Reeves. I knew Kyle had made a terrible mistake. I knew he had made similar mistakes before. I should have stopped it. Derek Whitman, the anonymous tipster, was arrested 3 weeks after the incident. His phone records revealed the full extent of his campaign. 43 calls to ICE over 2 years. All targeting minorities. All providing false information about illegal aliens in professional positions. He had found his targets through social media, news articles, and professional announcements. Anytime a black or Hispanic person was featured in local media for professional achievement, Whitman considered it an opportunity. His interviews revealed the motivation. These people are taking jobs from real Americans. Someone has to do something. I was just reporting what I suspected. It's not my fault if ICE investigates. If they're really citizens, they have nothing to worry about. The nothing to worry about had cost Captain Washington his dignity. It had cost taxpayers millions in legal liability. It had cost public trust in immigration enforcement. And it had cost Whitman his freedom. The federal grand jury convened 8 weeks after the incident. Braddock was indicted on civil rights violations, false imprisonment, and deprivation of rights under color of law. Whitman was indicted on conspiracy charges and filing false federal reports. Both would face trial. Both would face consequences. And the pattern that had allowed them to operate for years would finally be exposed. The federal courtroom in Atlanta filled to capacity every day of the trial. Firefighters in dress uniforms. Civil rights advocates. Media from across the country. Captain Washington testified on the 3rd day. He wore his dress uniform. Navy blue, gold buttons, 3 Medal of Valor ribbons on his chest. The uniform he had earned through 20 years of service. On the morning of the incident, I arrived at Station 17 for my regular shift. I was greeting my crew when Agent Braddock approached and informed me he had received a tip about an illegal alien working at the station. What was your response? I told him I was the captain. I had worked at that station for 20 years. I was born 6 blocks away. How did Agent Braddock respond? He said anyone could buy a uniform online. He said he needed documentation proving I was legally authorized to work in this country. The bodycam footage was played for the jury. They watched Braddock approach. They watched Washington explain his history. They watched the crew emerge from the bay doors with phones raised. They watched the handcuffs applied to a 20-year veteran in front of his own station. Captain Washington, what was going through your mind when you were handcuffed? I was thinking about my father. He served at that station for 30 years. He used to bring me there as a kid. I knew every corner of that building before I ever wore the uniform. He paused. I was thinking about my grandfather. He was one of the first black firefighters in Atlanta. 1963. He faced things I can't imagine. Racism, discrimination, colleagues who didn't want him there. But he stayed. He served. He proved he belonged. His voice remained steady. And I was standing in handcuffs, being asked to prove the same thing he had to prove 60 years ago. The crew of Station 17 testified one by one. Lieutenant Chun described the captain who had trained him. Engineer Davis described the mentor who had made him a firefighter. Morrison described being rescued from a collapsing structure. Jackson described 2 generations of Washingtons teaching 2 generations of Jacksons. Chief Okonkwo testified about Washington's service record, the Medals of Valor, the Firefighter of the Year award, the 200 recruits he had trained. Captain Washington represents everything this department stands for. Courage, service, sacrifice. He has given 20 years of his life to protecting Atlanta, and he was treated like a criminal for showing up to work. The defense attempted the standard arguments. Following procedure. Responding to a tip. No way to know. The prosecutor's rebuttal was surgical. No way to know. The captain showed him credentials. The captain explained his family history. The captain offered verification through the fire department. 8 firefighters identified their captain. Agent Braddock ignored all of it because he had already decided what he was looking at. She displayed his stop records. 12 investigations. All minorities. All unfounded. This wasn't immigration enforcement. This was harassment. And Captain Washington was victim 13, the first one whose crew stood behind him and documented everything. The jury deliberated for 5 hours. Guilty on all counts. Braddock and Whitman both. Washington watched from the gallery as the verdicts were read. His crew sat behind him. The same firefighters who had emerged from the bay doors, phones raised, refusing to let their captain face this alone. Justice had been delivered by a system that worked when witnesses ensured it couldn't fail. The sentencing hearing brought closure that the trial had only begun. Agent Braddock, you were entrusted with the authority to enforce immigration law. Instead, you used that authority to harass, detain, and humiliate American citizens based on the color of their skin. Your pattern of conduct spans years. Your targeting was systematic. Your refusal to verify was willful. The judge reviewed the pre-sentencing materials with visible contempt. When you handcuffed Captain Washington, you didn't just violate his rights. You insulted 60 years of family service. You demeaned 3 generations of firefighters who dedicated their lives to protecting Atlanta. You proved that for some officers, no amount of service, no number of medals, no depth of history is enough to overcome the assumption that a black man doesn't belong. Braddock's sentence, 5 years federal prison. Enhanced for pattern of conduct. Enhanced for targeting under color of authority. Derek Whitman received 3 years for conspiracy and filing false federal reports. Both were led from the courtroom in handcuffs. The civil settlement followed within 3 months. The Department of Homeland Security agreed to pay $9.8 million rather than face a trial that would expose systemic failures across multiple field offices. Captain Washington directed the distribution with the same precision he applied to fire operations. For $1 million to establish the Samuel Washington Scholarship Fund, named for his grandfather, providing full tuition for minorities pursuing careers in fire service and public safety. $2 million to the Atlanta Firefighters Burn Foundation, supporting the families of injured firefighters and burn victims throughout Georgia. $2 million to civil rights organizations focused on immigration enforcement accountability. The remaining funds secured his family's future. His twins, Jerome, 3, and Marcus, would graduate from the fire academy without debt. His daughter Destiny would complete Spelman. His youngest, Samuel, would have college covered when the time came. ICE entered a consent decree requiring mandatory source verification before responding to anonymous tips. The no harm done philosophy that had guided agents like Braddock would finally face oversight. Captain Washington returned to Station 17 the shift after his release from handcuffs. Same crew, same command, same station where 3 generations of his family had served. The only change was the photograph that now hung in the common room. Not his Medal of Valor ceremonies. Not his Firefighter of the Year award. The photograph showed 8 firefighters standing in the morning sun, phones raised, forming a semicircle behind their captain. The crew that had refused to let him face injustice alone. 6 months after the verdict, Jerome Washington, 3, and Marcus Washington graduated from the Atlanta Fire Academy. Their father pinned their badges in a ceremony held at Station 17, the same station where their grandfather had served, where their great-grandfather had been one of the first black firefighters in the city. For generations. 61 years. One family. The Washington legacy continued. Captain Washington still arrives early for every shift. Still greets his crew in front of the station. Still wears the uniform that Braddock had dismissed as something anyone can buy online. The uniform means something. The captain's bars mean something. The 60 years of family service means something. And the crew of Station 17 knows exactly what it means to stand behind their captain, the same way he has always stood in front of them, first through every door, leading them into danger, bringing them home safe. The anonymous tip line still exists, but the protocols have changed. Verification is mandatory, and somewhere in Atlanta, a fire captain teaches the next generation what his grandfather taught his father, what his father taught him. Service is the answer. Always has been. Always will be.
In our relentless pursuit of the truth, we refuse to look away. We are committed to holding power to account, because at the end of the day, the records don't lie. Thank you for watching our channel.